We're talking tonight with Jonathan Vandersluis, notorious quitter of the fantasy game. I'm so sorry, Jonathan. I didn't mean to do you that way. Let's try this again. Jonathan Vandersluis, known in the fantasy industry for playing like Brazil in the World Cup. No, that's not right. Sorry, you're a rocket scientist. I can see why you were not swayed by the mad fantasy football cash. Jonathan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Zach. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I just get concerned. I'm all about the industry, and it's sad to see somebody decide to hang up the virtual spikes. So, what led to this momentous decision?
So basically, um, I've been running Top Team Fantasy for about 2 years. Thursday was our 2-year uh, anniversary, and I saw your beer. I got distracted for a second, but basically,
Anchor Porter. That's the beer of the night. Anyway, carry
oh,
on.
nice. So basically, after running for 2 years, like my life has changed a fair bit from when I started. It started sort of just as something, I was doing because I had some extra time. It was a fun hobby, and over time it grew into a super, I guess, sort of like a second job kind of thing. And I was sort of spending all my free time working on getting the site as successful as it had been. Um, and we had a tremendous amount of success. I'm really proud of where we took it, but basically I got to the point where I realized that the amount of time that I was putting into it wasn't really worth um, what I was getting out of it, and there was other things that I was sort of pushing to the side which I didn't feel that I could afford to continue to do that. So there's a lot of other opportunities in my life that I'm super excited about, and I wanted to sort of give them my full attention. So I'm not officially retiring from fantasy football. I'm still active on Twitter, and probably I'm gonna end up writing somewhere else in the future. But managing top team fantasy and all that kind of stuff is something that I'm moving on from. So
So you're retiring like a kind of a Brett Favre like retirement. You're gonna
yeah,
have
you can't
a
get rid of
press
me that
conference
easy.
in your driveway.
Yeah, you can't get rid of me very easy. I was basically I'm like those cockroaches that you step on a couple times and they're still crawling afterwards. So.
That's a nice way to compare yourself. I see. Yeah, I noticed you're having kind of extended Twitter conversation. I think it was with Carl Safchik
Yeah.
from Dynasty League Football about the struggles in the industry trying to make a few bucks and how people sort of lean toward that free content as opposed to the premium
hmm
stuff. I don't know, maybe you can get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So basically, I'm not the most experienced in this area. I've only been running a site for 2 years, and there's people that have been in the industry for a hell of a lot longer than me. But um, it became very clear to me that running a site um, doesn't have the upside of spending the time that you could in another business, let's say. And I'm not, an entrepreneur by trade. Like, I'm an engineer and spend a lot of time more in science-related areas, but I think I have a pretty decent mind for business. Um, and I'm very surprised sort of how in the industry people tend to um, I would say settle for, I'm doing this because I love it and not sort of demand that people pay you for your service. I know a lot of people that have been writing for a lot longer than I have, and 5+ years in the industry, and even those people that are doing it full time, they're struggling to make ends meet. So um, it's sort of it's sort of hard for me to see people that I care about and people that I see do amazing work have such a tremendously difficult time trying to make a living doing this, whereas um, there's so many people out there that are writing for free, and it makes it difficult to sustain an industry with that kind of approach, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to separate it because I think pretty much everybody who writes about fantasy started out as
Exactly.
just somebody who played in a league and was like, well, these people write about it, why don't I? Or why don't I put
Yeah.
my 2 cents in? I mean, my whole reason to get in was just doing these interviews and getting to talk to people and getting to know them. And it's true. I swear, at about 130 plus interviews, I don't know, 6, 8 people actually make a full time living doing it.
Hmm.
I think 2 of those are the football guys, founders. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of a crowded industry, but maybe we don't realize that we're talking about billions of dollars being put into this, especially with
Exactly. So like,
daily fantasy blowing up.
yeah, like that's my feeling. There's such a huge industry behind it, and the advice industry is largely based on offering your time and your effort completely for free. And there are sites that do charge for subscriptions, but I don't think we do a good enough job at giving those people that are really driving the industry and doing tireless work, being on Twitter and writing articles and putting all that effort forward. We don't really give them the I guess sort of like the culture that we've created has become such that people demand their advice for free, and we need to do a better job to make people understand how much fantasy writers are really worth. Whereas if you give away everything for free, people sort of expect that it's going to be for free. So if you even if you charge a little bit, people tend to appreciate more what they're getting from you as opposed to um, you know you get what you pay for kind of thing.
Well, I appreciate you. So there you go.
Well, I'm not
Appreciation.
doing anything anymore, so it's easy to appreciate me now.
I appreciate the tweets. The tweets are appreciated.
There you
I
go.
think I don't know if you're necessarily unusual, but someone who does like engineering, it's like a very kind of analytical business. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people maybe they have these kind of analytical day jobs, but in terms of writing, it's always considered a creative pursuit.
Hmm.
So it's really hard to divorce the creative part with the oh yeah, I'm spending this amount of time writing this amount of words,
Yeah.
and what does it ultimately come out? Because you could write, I mean, you could read probably 100 fantasy articles a day just based on everything that's coming out. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking paid sites, non-paid sites,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
you have to find the stuff that you really connect with to feel good. So,
Hmm.
do you feel like comfortable talking about some of the stuff you
Of
work on
course.
now that you have
Yeah.
all this free time?
So yeah,
Besides
like
drinking more, right? Yeah, of course.
for sure. So my life while I was doing the site was extremely busy as it was. So I'm not so sure I'm gonna have like this super extra glut of free time that I'm gonna be spending, just relaxing on the beach. Even though I am actually going on vacation on Thursday, but that's a whole other thing we can talk about in a second. But basically, I've been in addition to working full time as an engineer, I work in a company that builds landing gears for airplanes. Um, but basically, in addition to doing that, I've been very involved in the community in Toronto. One of the big things that I do is I help mentor young adults through this program that they lead, trips for even younger adults. Um, and this year, I was sort of given the opportunity to be able to chair that program, something that I find extremely rewarding and something that I can see the impact of the time that I put in, and I can see these people growing throughout the process, and how they're able to affect change within the community. So that was sort of like a big opportunity in my life, and one that I didn't feel like it made sense to pass up. And I tried for a couple months to try to do top team fantasy with doing this new commitment, and I realized that I wasn't really able to give it my full attention, and managing the site and all the pressure and stress that goes along with that. As much as I love writing about fantasy sports and managing the team and the people that I've worked with, I realized that I had to make a change in my life to be able to fully give that my all. So I'm not going to be away from fantasy sports is something I love, but be able to write it and do it more of a part-time basis as opposed to a second job kind of thing is something that fits more with my schedule at this point.
So mentoring young people or telling me to take in the first round. You're saying that was not a tough choice for you?
Yeah, so like mentoring people that have a lot of other people to mentor them is probably less important than some people that I think you can. I guess like building real relationships is more important than building internet relationships at times. I guess that's something
I've
you could
heard
say.
rumors about these real person relationships, but
Yeah.
talking to people in chats or hangouts, there you go. It's
Like seeing
sort of a
people's facial
context.
expressions, it's kind of overrated a little bit, but
Yeah, I imagine it's just an emoticon, all the time. That's what it is. So so is this associated with this group, this trip you're taking shortly?
no. So I'm going on vacation with my girlfriend. We've been dating 5.5 years at this point, and we've never really gone on a really big vacation. So I'm taking her to Spain and Portugal on Thursdays. We're going for 2 weeks. So I'm super excited about that. We're like super stressed out getting everything ready, but besides that, it's gonna be like an amazing trip, and we're gonna have such a good time. We're gonna post things on Twitter all the time to make sure that you guys are nice and jealous. So there you go.
So, all right, you're in Canada. You guys get vacation, right? That's
Well,
nice.
I get my 2 weeks.
Take it all at once, huh? No, I'm
Yeah.
planning. My wife is finishing up her master's, so we're gonna try to
Oh,
take a
nice.
trip to Italy.
Sweet.
In the spring, it was a delayed trip. Like, let's take a trip to Italy. Hey, how about I go to grad school? Well, I think one reason she's going to grad school is to have something to do in the weekends when I'm watching football all the time.
There you
Not that
go.
there's anything. Well, there's probably something wrong with that, but let's just say not that there's anything wrong with
So yeah, my
that.
girlfriend's a PhD student, so I totally understand. This
Like,
is
yeah,
a
it's like I had
this
done
is
enough
like a
school, but yeah,
yeah.
you two have like 17 degrees between the two of you probably.
So she's the smart one in the relationship.
That's that's very impressive. So, what did you think about the Bills' performance, and does that first preseason game really even matter at all?
Yeah, like to me, preseason is not something I really spend too much effort into. I actually didn't have a chance to watch it just because I was pretty busy. But I got the updates on Twitter and
I was like, you could have
everybody.
watched it on Twitter. It was great.
Exactly. So you see everybody overreacting to every performance that happened, and realistically, like really what's going to happen for the most part for those teams. Somebody can have a good performance and take a step forward, but I'm not expecting that Rashad Jennings is going to be overtaken by, who was it that had a big performance last night? I forget the name.
Yeah, I was just thinking
Yeah, I'm out of the industry.
when the Titans played in the Hall of Fame game, all I remember is when their punter did the fake punt.
Yeah.
And that was the punter who had he was their backup punter, and he was the guy who hit the scoreboard in Dallas too. So he had a great
Oh,
preseason.
yeah,
But
yeah.
other than that, I don't remember a darn thing about this one.
Yeah, like the third preseason game often I'll watch, but the first and second, usually they don't play the starters long enough to really make it so interesting for most football fans that don't know players after the people that ride the bench. So it's not a lot of advice really you can give from a performance in the preseason against players that aren't going to end up playing for the team.
Yeah, that's it. We're always looking for the deeper meaning in everything. And I
Exactly.
actually drove up about 30 miles north of town because I'm in Atlanta, and the Titans came in to practice with the Falcons. I
Yeah.
didn't get to see the whole thing, but I saw about an hour of it. And I'm like, this is the teams have been practicing together for a couple of weeks. It's not supposed to be smooth. It's going to be a little off because that's the point. That's
Yeah.
why we're practicing. So you'll be
Exactly.
good when the season starts, and just wrap Jake Lucker and bubble wrap, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Perfect.
Do you feel like this calm? Like, has your blood pressure just gone back to normal? And you're like, hey,
So yeah, like
I
it's a
figured it
very
out.
weird feeling once I came to this decision. It was about 3 weeks before I made the announcement that I sort of decided that it was time to move on. Um, And I, like every crazy fantasy football guy would naturally do, I decided that it was time still to make sure that we finished our team preview series, which we were less than halfway done. So essentially, we released like one article a day until the end of that 3 weeks. So I made myself a little crazy trying to get through it, but as soon as I made the decision, it was really like a big weight lifted off my shoulders. Like I had been falling behind on articles, and just like the amount of time that I usually would spend into to keep upkeeping the site and making sure that we would put out pretty much an article a day for 3 different sports, between the 3 of them, and stay up to date on 3 different sports for 2 years. It's a lot of work to keep everything um, up to speed, especially to compete with such an amazing other sites that are in the industry. So um, being able to know that I don't have to push to make sure that articles can get out on time and that kind of stuff. It's a big weight off my shoulders, and I have a lot of opportunities at this point to be able to write for other sites, and I'm excited once I get back from my trip to potentially take advantage of some of that, and once in a while, whenever I'm passionate about it, I can write something, and I don't have to worry about making sure that 12 people are happy, and their articles are going out on time, and everything that they write is edited well, and all that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, it's much more relaxing, and hopefully this time next week it will be even much more relaxing when I'm sitting on the beach with my feet up. So
Yeah,
that'll
I
be
can,
good.
like, preseason. Who cares about that, huh? Do they have preseason for like all the multiple, like Spanish soccer league and all that?
That I can't tell you. I'm hoping to see some bullfighting while I'm there, so maybe some preseason bullfighting.
Yeah, yeah. I made a joke about fantasy cricket once and fantasy bullfighting. The gore bonus. Okay, well, we're
Ooh,
gonna jump to
that's
some. I
good.
actually, this is like the first time I've actually said, "Hey, Twitter, ask questions," and Twitter's actually responded. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens here. You actually answered this in the interview, but Ty in St. Louis, Ty Miller, did ask, "Did you choose sex over fantasy football?"
So yeah, Ty, he's my boy. I'm a big fan of Ty. But yeah, technically I didn't choose one over the other, but obviously sex always takes precedence. I sort of was asked this question a little bit in our Ask the Rocket Scientist interview a little while back, but yeah, like my girlfriend's pretty busy as it is, so when I do have the opportunity to spend time with her, I want to try to give her my full attention. But so yeah, it's kind of sex takes a little bit more precedence.
You go PPR standard. Just kidding. It's so funny. Oh, you don't even know what that is. Yeah. Okay, this is a weird question, but I feel like I should
Hmm.
ask it. BMats08 asked, "Did you ever make a draft pick while I'll just say in the bathroom?"
Yeah, so I saw this question. I had a little bit of time to think about it, but
Yeah, I'm glad.
so
Yeah, yeah. You really have to
racking my
noodle this one
brain.
over.
Yeah, racking my brain. I can't remember ever making a draft pick while in the washroom, but I have made draft picks in situations. Like yesterday, I had a draft, and I was picking while I had my cousins run into my room and try to get all my attention. While I was like shooing them out of the room, and trying to make sure that I got the right pick in. Um, so yeah, like I have some interesting draft experiences, but I don't think I've ever drafted in the washroom. Like I try to make sure that I'm in good shape before I enter a draft. It's my zone that if I have to go to the washroom, I'm going to my pants. So
Washroom, I tell you,
yeah,
you
you Americans in your
Canadians,
bathrooms.
you Americans in your bathrooms. Hey, at least I'm drinking decent beer. We got Coach Esser asking, "What's harder, rocket science or figuring out what Bill Belichick's doing with his backfield?"
Definitely what Bill Belichick is doing with his backfield. So um, I've always been one. Everybody was sort of high on Ridley last year, in the preseason last year. Not to toot my own horn too much, but I was tweeting a lot about the history of that backfield, and Ridley was the first guy I think in 10 years that had more than 230 carries in a season, that one season. So I had a feeling that it wasn't going to repeat itself, and I was telling people to watch out about it. And unfortunately for people that drafted him, it tended to happen. Um, but yeah, this year you see people invest in Varane with pretty high picks, and that injury situation and his tendency with running backs, it's making me very nervous. So I would be a little bit more skeptical than some people tend to.
I feel like the rookie running backs are finally getting some
yeah,
play.
like James White's getting a lot of hype, and he's a talented guy, and it's sort of always what Bill Belichick kind of does. He game plans everything based on who he's playing against, and Varine's going to have a lot of good games, but there's going to be games like there was at the end of last year where you expected he was going to have a monster game, and he got 6 touches and flopped on everybody's in everyone's starting lineup, and the next week he had a monster game. So it's hard to predict because he sees the game very differently than we would do, just analyzing based on the numbers. You see the matchups, and this kind of football mind that really goes in deep, that understands the game better than pretty much anyone. So to be able to get those, exploiting those matchups, we'll do it in such a way that it's hard for us to, as fantasy analysts, to mimic that.
I think Belichick figured out that whole, running backs are pretty replaceable before everybody else did. I mean, he ended up getting, Antoine Smith, who was kind of let go by the Bills. Sorry, probably too soon. And then Corey Dillon, who was kind of at the end of his career. He had a year or two left, and then, it's been just a pinball machine. I think a couple years ago I took Kevin Falk. I picked him up in desperation because he had like 10 points, and then he didn't even touch the ball the next week. So that's just how it goes in Belichick land.
For sure.
So I was the first. I was like, well, I know, I kind of like Aaron Dobson. And it's like, he had like a screw inserted in his foot. That just doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I feel it's sort of like the same way with the receivers there. Like, Dobson is tending to get a lot of hype in this offseason, and last year as well. He was sort of being touted as the guy, but halfway through the preseason, people sort of switched to Tompkins, and throughout the whole season, it kept seesawing back and forth between different players and having their number one targets. And Dobson had a good stretch, but I'm not going to be taking him unless he's outside the top 50 wide receivers. People tend to overdraft him a little bit.
Yeah, everybody's kind of drafting on hope. It's sort of like I was talking about the Rams earlier, and it's just like, I don't know what Jeff Fisher does with skill position players, but he just does not do very well with them. So
he just runs the football. That's what he does. But can trust Zach Stacy, but
it's not just that. He's picked up all these ex-Titans, and they've done nothing for him. It's exactly. Kind of strange, but the mustache abides. It was a fun run with him, and now hopefully the Titans have an actual adult NFL coach this year. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Be at least happy that the Bills finally got rid of those weird jerseys they were wearing like 5 years ago and went back to those throwbacks that were kind of like some of the best looking jerseys they've had.
So even though I'm from Toronto and the Bills sometimes like to pretend that they're Toronto's team, I've never been a Bills guy. So really, jerseys are not the Bills jerseys are not super high on my list, but I kind of like if they decided to move to Toronto, I'd be super excited about it. We having an NFL team in the city, but at this point, I'm not. There's a lot of teams that I'd much rather follow. I'm not. I never grew up as a fan of a single team. I only really super got into fantasy football, NFL when I started getting into fantasy football. So I'm sort of a fan more of players than I am of teams. But yeah, like if I had my choice of team, there was like probably 25 teams I would rather have than the Bills to come to Toronto.
Well, maybe the Jaguars, right? But
That
they
is
have a
not
pool
high on my
now.
list.
I don't know. I think teal, could be a good color for you. Hard to
Yeah.
say. Mm-hmm.
Well, like
Oh, sure.
the Bills sort of are screwing themselves over when they do this whole Toronto marketing thing because they basically like take the same product that you can get in Buffalo and they take it to Toronto, they double the prices, and they expect people are going to pay to see it when you can drive for an hour and a half, and see the same thing in Buffalo and have a much better experience. So, um, like they could have made the whole Toronto experience something that would have been more of a positive one and created more of an excitement. Whereas instead they sort of made a little bit more of a sour taste in a lot of Torontonians' mouth because like nobody wanted to pay the exuberant amount of ticket prices that they had.
And that's like Canadian dollars too. That's like real money.
You guys are a little ahead of us, but I remember back in the day when I was little, it was 60 cents Canadian or 60 cents American was $1 Canadian. So we're pretty much on par at this point. But
Okay, this is my opportunity to ask my one very specific Canadian question. Are
mhm.
you a fan of the band Blue Rodeo?
I'm not a huge fan of the band Blue Rodeo. They're not really the genre of music I tend to listen to as much. Um, but I'm familiar with them, slightly familiar with them. I
Slightly
couldn't name you a
familiar.
single. I couldn't name you a single one of their songs, but I know I have some friends that are fans and follow them from time to time.
Well, they're
So
getting
yeah,
a little up there. Like two of my favorite bands are them and like the Navy Giants, and those are two bands
yeah,
that have been together since like the early '80s. And it's like,
yeah,
wait, they're like in their 40s and 50s, and they're still cranking stuff out. It's funny because they've I don't know, like a folk band I really like, and if they come to Atlanta, it's a real big surprise, and about 200 people show up. So I'm like, hey,
hmm
it's good. But I figured I'd ask. It's my Canadian
yeah,
question.
for sure.
So is there anything else you'd like to add this evening to tell your fan base? You're going to keep your Twitter handle. Will you still be around to at least taunt us about our deadlines and all that?
So yeah, like I'll definitely still be around. Like I said, like I would like to write at some point for another site. I want to sort of recover a little bit from the stress and sort of get settled into my new responsibilities. But the plan is at some point to continue writing. So I'm not at this stage, I'm not separating myself at all from football. Like, I'm so super excited about the season started. We're running some fantasy leagues with some of my Twitter followers, um, and yeah, I'm excited for football to start. But yeah, at this point, what's going to be coming out of me as far as fantasy football analysis is not going to be what it was, back in the heyday of Top Team Fantasy, which I don't know if you can call 2 years a heyday, um, but yeah, I'm excited for the next chapter and all the and all the real life opportunities that I'm gonna have in addition to the fantasy football ones. So hopefully it will give me some more life experience to be able to contribute more in the fantasy world as well. So maybe down the road, some different opportunities within the fantasy game than just providing advice and things like that. So yeah, I'm open to the very different ideas, and like I was saying in that conversation, I do think there is much work to be done in the fantasy industry before we really reach a point where it's a sustainable industry that people are really getting what they're worth. So potentially, even maybe work a little bit on that, and try to help other sites reach more of their potential. So who knows at this point? I'm still sort of figuring out what's next. But if you have any ideas, you're more than welcome to recommend them.
That's right, Twitter. Get on it. I've heard that real life is overrated, but that's just what I heard on Twitter. So, Jonathan, thank you for taking the time to say hi. And I knew it. Most people say they're getting out, but it's like Godfather 2. You want out, they got to bring you back in. But you do it on your own terms. And yeah, if I can fit into one of your carry-on bags, I'd really like to join you in that trip to Spain. Sounds like fun.
Amazing. Yeah, I will. So I'll make a stop over in Atlanta and pick you up. And
Oh yeah, it's just down the road.
if you ever seen Cirque du Soleil, if you can, a good old Canadian show. So if you can, twist yourself into a pretzel or something and be able to fit into a very small space, then yeah, you're definitely welcome in my big knapsack suitcase that I'm going to be having in my back. So it's how much have you been working out lately? I don't know. Maybe a little too heavy to fit on the.
Yeah, the beers are not treating me so good. I'm trying to stay in my fighting weight, but that's not.
Yeah, so yeah, I might have to pay a little extra service charge for the weight, but besides that, I'm sure you'll be
Put a straw on
lots
there.
of place in our nice romantic double bed. Or
Yeah, like dude, you're on your own. Go find a hostel or something.
yeah.
Well,
But
thanks a
yeah,
lot,
thanks so much for
Jonathan.
having me. It was really appreciate the invite. I know I'm still sort of new to the industry, even though I did spend 2 years running the site. Um, I was always super impressed with how quickly people in the industry embraced me, and I try to do that to new people as well. Um, but it's really a great environment on Twitter, and everybody sort of helps each other out, and it's not really a competitive environment to that extent. Like there's a lot of it is sort of a cutthroat industry, but people tend to help each other out so much more than what I expected before I got into it. So to everybody that sort of helped me get to where I was throughout the 2 years that I ran the site, I really appreciate that. And for you helping profile me on your interviews, that was a really big help for me, and something that I was really proud of, that we were able to do that. So thanks again for that. But yeah, so I'll still be around. Don't be a stranger.
That's right. So yeah, keep an eye on him, the Jonathan TTF, and we'll post this pretty shortly. And yeah, Zach_Law and fantasysports.org. We'll be talking about the industry. Always good to talk with people in person, and good to kind of start our interviews and then get to know them a little better. So thanks a lot, Jonathan. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. And football, we love it. Can't get enough.